sometimes it hurts, here. Who here has ever had pain in their hands while working? Yeah, okay, cool. So I was in the same case than you, right? What if I told you that by the end of this talk, you will actually be able to get rid of this? That's cool. Hopefully. At least, hopefully, you will have ideas on how you can get to that point, to being pain-free while working. So I'm Julien. I'm Senior Cloud Native Engineer in Container Solutions. And yeah, here is my talk about frictionless ergonomics and how to get smoother. While a big part of our job in Cloud Native is about building and deploying software and removing friction while doing so, we never think much about how we can put our thoughts on our computer without friction. So Ergonomics can really help with this because it can really improve our well-being by reducing pain and fatigue at the end of the day, but also increase our productivity, because like this you can get in the flow more quickly and more consistently. So while manufacturers use that term a lot to justify exorbitant pricing for their product, it is nonetheless really important, especially when working in front of computers. So in the short term, it can, as I said, relieve you from pain, from common causes of pain, the same way, so ergonomics can really relieve you from pain, and we have standing desks, for example, and also chairs, ergonomic chairs that allow you to have like proper position. So this is a proper position when you're supposed to work. And today we're not going to talk much about this, because this, I think, we can see it more and more in enterprise environment, and I mean, we all know it exists. But we're going to talk about keyboards, because while it's easy to remove the pain from the back, I mean, easy, with standing desks and stuff like this, the hand pain, usually, even with a standing desk or with a proper chair, you don't remove it. You still have it, and it chases you. So today I'm going to talk about keyboards and how it can actually improve your well-being and productivity. So this was the sound of an ergonomic mechanical keyboard. So let's define a few things. Like this, we all talk about the same stuff. So mechanical. Classic keyboards are membrane keyboards. So they have a layer of plastic or rubber, and when you press on a key, it creates a circuit and it registers the keystroke. With mechanical keyboards, you have switches under every key of your keyboard. So those are made of a housing, the outside, a stem, the plastic part here, a spring in the middle, that where you can manage the force that you have to press to actuate it, and then a keycap. What's very different, if you have ever had a coworker having one of those keyboards, is you have more feedback, especially audible feedback when you type on them. You have ways to go around that, but yeah, that's something that's going to happen. In terms of ergonomics, so for keyboards that are ergonomic are keyboards that have design elements made especially to relieve tension in your arm, to relieve the tension in your wrist, elbow, and shoulder. Then, why is it so interesting, those ergonomic mechanical keyboard, compared to regular keyboard? So, first, because you have a lot of keyboards that are already mechanical keyboards without being ergonomic. So, as I said, the main point is tactility, then they're more durable, so usually you can keep one for your whole life, and they're more customizable. Concerning the switches, so you have different type of switches. You have switches that are clicky. Can I try that? Yeah. You have switches that are tactile. and you have switches that are linear. So as you might hear, some of them make more noise, some of them make less, and the difference is also in the feeling. Some of them have resistance when you press on them, some of them don't. It's really a question of preference. The main thing that you will have to choose also is if you want, in keyboards, in mechanical keyboards, is if you want to have regular size switches or if you want to have low profile switches. So those ones are going to be feeling more like when you type on a laptop. More importantly than switches, in my opinion, is actually keycaps, so the stuff you're actually typing on. You put your fingers on that because, yeah, I mean, you're going to touch that all day long. So that's really what's going to change your feeling when you're typing. You have a lot of different profiles from MT3, like this one. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's really, really curved. And you have like scoops on the keys, so it feels all like warm and cushy. And you have other ones that are like this, that are like more straight, I would say, and more flat. So it's really a question of preference. I mean, you can try as many as you can before buying one. That's great if you can do that. You have a great website called keycaps.info where you can see all information concerning this. Okay, the ergonomic part of mechanical keyboards, we're removing the staggering, the horizontal staggering. So the upper illustration is how normal keyboards are. You have keys that are slightly on the side with each row is slightly off on the side. So this design has its roots with the design of early typewriters because they needed space and they needed to do that to avoid jamming. So if you've ever heard the story also of QWERTY, the layout, this is similar. And the only reason we still have both of those today is because change is hard. But with ergonomic keyboards, you can actually you remove that staggering, and some of them that you can see here are ortholinear, so they are in a grid. This is already great, but if you look at your hand when it's at rest, you can see that your fingers usually don't fall on the same line. So the idea of columnar staggering is to follow the shape of your hand. Like this, you're even feeling more at home when you're putting your hand on your keyboard. This doesn't only make things much better for ergonomics, but it also makes things much easier. So one thing that you might be thinking right now is that it's really hard. It should be really hard to try those new things, and how can you type on something like this? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But actually, thanks to that, the removal of the normal staggering, it's much easier. So who can tell me what key is on top of J? Top. U, right? And then below? V? No, not V. M. Almost.
M?
N is a bit on the left. Right. But when we think about keys, we think about on top and below. We have the home row, so where the middle row, and then you think about keys being on top and below. You never think about being on top and slightly on one side or on top and slightly on the other side. So this is why it makes things much easier when you don't have that. Switching to such a keyboard can improve not only, so if you don't know how to touch type, you can really learn way faster with this. And if you already know, it can really improve your typing speed and accuracy. I would say it takes between a few days to get to your previous speeds to maybe a couple of weeks to get really comfortable and actually removing all the pain that you could have had and be even faster. So another design element that some ergonomic keyboards have are split. So as you might have seen earlier, so here is the microdocks. So this is this one. So a lot of ergonomic mechanical keyboards are split, and this has many advantages. So the first one is that you can put your two halves like this and have your cat sit in the middle, and like this you can continue working. But otherwise, it's also great because it removes tension. Instead of being, where do I go? Here? Here. Instead of being like this when you're typing on a regular keyboard, you can actually have your hands be in a much more natural position. Another point that you can see here is tenting. So you can raise the internal part of your keyboard. Like this, you further remove tension, and you further go closer and closer to your natural hand position once you raise them like this. The last point that is really important, and especially for me it was crucial, are the thumb keys. Indeed, instead of having to use your pinkies and extend them like to reach the shift keys, control keys, and stuff like this, you can use your thumb that is much stronger to have modifiers to reach modifiers using much more natural movement. So for me, this was really the thing that was the most important to get from being in pain every day before midday to then being able to sit straight for 10 hours on the keyboard and actually not feel more numbness because I didn't move enough, which is, it's not good ergonomically, right? But, you know, one thing at a time. So not everyone will have, you know, the same results. I'm not saying that if you try that, you know, in 2 weeks, everything will be great and you can call me if it's not, but it's very different depending on everyone. So we all have different bodies and we all have different solutions to the pains we have. So there is many different layouts, many different shapes of keyboards, and, you know, try to explore them. And if you really want to get rid of your of the pain that you have in your arm. Okay, something that you might have also realized that you don't have many keys, right? So how do you do to, you know, numbers and all this and symbols? You use custom firmware to, instead of having physical keys around, you actually have logical layers. To reach them, you press a key, and then you have your other layer. So think about it like your shift key. When you press shift, instead of numbers, you have symbols. Instead of lowercase keys, you have uppercase letters. This, for example, can, one of the examples that I use is, and that I'm actually using, is if I press on one of the thumb keys, then I have a numpad that's directly under my fingers. I don't need to reach anywhere else. When coding, for example, it's also very useful because instead of having to reach weird places to have all the symbols, you can decide where you want to put them, so that it makes sense for you. The firmware for all of this is open source, is called QMK, and ZMK is the wireless version. And with QMK, you can not only have behavior for tapping keys, but you can also have behavior to when you hold a key. And you can map behavior when you multiple tap a key. Or you can have behavior when you press multiple keys at the same time, which are called combos. So you see that with this, you have a lot of possibilities. One of them that I particularly like is home row mods. Home row mods, it means that instead of having your modifiers on the thumb or somewhere else, you can actually have them on your home row. So when I press J once, it's J. When I hold it, it's shift. This way, I don't have to move my hands further. So if you wonder how I do shift J, because, you know, that would be a problem, I have the exact same thing on the other hand. Like this, if I need to do shift J, I press on F, I hold F, this is shift, and then I press J. So this is not for everyone, right? Because also you can imagine that when you type fast, it can be confusing. You can mistype stuff, and when you mistype depending on the computer you're using, sometimes you're closing things you're not supposed to close, or it can happen. So it's not for everyone, but it's interesting nonetheless. Everything I talked about so far will be really, really useful in terms of ergonomics to remove from pain, but also for productivity. Indeed, removing friction in our personal DevX allows us to stay focused longer and be less tired at the end of the day. So how so? I told you before about the flow theory. So the flow theory was developed by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in the 70s, and it's the theory of the flow is the same thing than when we say we're in the zone. It's that really nice feeling when time passes very quickly and we are absolutely focused on one task. So that state has been linked to increased productivity, creativity, and overall well-being. So the faster we can get in the flow, the longer we can stay in it, the better it is, right? To reach it, we need a few things. We need well-defined goals so that we can have purpose and direction. We also need a good balance between skill and challenge. So the task should be not too hard nor too easy. More importantly for us is the fact that we need to be able to fully concentrate on the task at hand, and we need to have a sense of control over our environment. So the smoother we can get our thoughts on the computer, the easier it will be to attain this state. To illustrate this, oh yes, sound is working now. That's good. I mean, it was really useful, right? So imagine you're in front of the computer and now you have a very important email to do, or you're working on code. So you're looking at something, you're thinking about the problem you're trying to solve, and then you look down at your keyboard, you begin to type, you look up, okay, oh, you made a mistake, shit. So you're reaching for your mouse, you're going with your cursor there, deleting, fixing it, looking again. Okay, that time it's right, okay. And now you can think about the next problem. This is a ton of cognitive load for simple tasks. So let's imagine now that if you have keyboard that is really logical for you, and where keys are where they make sense for you and for your use case, you could be simply looking at your screen and thinking about the problem, and automatically, you would have your thoughts directly on the computer without having to think about it. It would be completely automatic. How cool would that be? So this is exactly what you can reach with mechanical ergonomical keyboards. Okay, so you might think that all of this is very complex, you don't have time for this, you have work to do, you have maybe too much work to do already. But yeah, fair enough. It takes some time, but the good thing with that is that we can do a parallel with Cloud Native. With Cloud Native, you don't need to go all in right away. You can go step by step, little by little, drip by drip. And this is the exact same thing with ergonomic mechanical keyboards. You can actually go little by little and try a few things. And then if you like it, you can go further and further and further. So there is no right or wrong way to actually try all this. I will give you now a few examples on how you could start if it interests you. So the first thing is that if you want to come afterwards here or at the CS booth, I have a few keyboards if you want to put your hands on them. And this is called a switch tester. So if you want to test a few switches and see how it feels. Otherwise, so if you like soldering, you can also go on a website called splitkb.com, where you have a lot of kits that you can buy, and they're great. So some of them are more like this, some of them are bigger. You really have a lot of choices there. So this one, which is a low profile, is from that website. If you're not too happy with soldering, or if you don't want to spend too much time on this, you can actually buy the keyboard Atrius. So this is this one. It's available to buy already finished. And it's actually, I think, the best value that you can have, because usually ergonomics are quite expensive. So this one is a really good way to actually test things and see if you like it or not. There's a big brand that you might have heard of. It's Kinesis. So they have their Advantage 2 and Advantage 360. They have way more keys for some reason. But, I mean, they're really great keyboards, but they're also way, 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 way more expensive. So, regardless of the way you want to go about that, may your road to frictionless DevX be pain-free. Thank you.